I had a choice with this. To separate these out into two or do them as one video. And doing them as one video means it's going to take a little bit longer to get through it. But it's interesting because these teams switch spots. And I thought, you know what, when we did the 83-84, I did those as one video for the Oilers and the Islanders. And this kind of felt the same way. You had the veteran Detroit Red Wings organization and the up-and-coming Pittsburgh Penguins. And year one, Detroit comes out on top. Year two, Pittsburgh comes out on top. But they both meet in the finals. So let's look at it from the Pittsburgh side of things first. 2008, they go to the finals and they lose. 2009, they go to the finals and they win. Let me just go ahead and change those numbers because that's not right. Can't both lose the same series. I mean, it may feel like it sometimes when you're watching a series like, I don't think either of these guys deserve to win, but still, somebody's going to win every series. And it was interesting because for Pittsburgh, their rise was kind of quick. So after the first year or two, there were comments about how, well, Crosby can't turn this thing around on his own, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, he didn't need to. In 2008, the numbers show that Crosby led the way in scoring 6 goals and 21 assists. In 2009, the scoring was led by Evgeny Malkin with 14 goals and 22 assists. 2008, they lost 2 games on the way to the Stanley Cup final. 2009, they lost 5. So having an easier run to the finals doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. Sometimes that adversity in those early rounds help you out so that you're more ready for it in the later rounds. In both the 08 and 09 finals, you have Marc-Andre Fleury in net. And his numbers are better the year that he lost than they are the year that he won. He was 14-6 with a 1.97 goals against and a .933 save percentage in 2008 when they lost in 6 to Detroit. And in 2009, he had a 16-8 record, 2.61 goals against, and a .908 save percentage. Not only that, but if you look at the finals, and that's what this is here, and I kind of ran out of space at the end, so I apologize for that being so small. 2008 finals, Hossa led the way in scoring with 3 goals and 4 assists, followed by Crosby with 2 goals and 4 assists. Malkin had a goal and 2 assists, and Gonchar had 3 assists. So in 6 games, Pittsburgh was basically shut down. Fleury had a 2-4 record with a .923 save percentage. In 2009, when they won the Cup, Malkin led the way in scoring in the finals with 2 goals and 6 assists. Maxime Talbot was second with 4 goals and 2 assists, followed by Chris Letang with a goal and 3 assists. Marc-Andre Fleury was 4-3 with a .916 save percentage. So the numbers bear out. Marc-Andre Fleury appeared to play better from start to finish in 2008 than he did in 2009 when he won the Stanley Cup. But all that matters is he got that Stanley Cup ring. The interesting thing being that Crosby here has 31 points for second on the list in 2009 when they won the Cup. He gets 3 points in the final in 7 games. So that kind of sort of gets forgotten in about all this. Now, if you look at the runs, and we'll go through this, in the first round, the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2008, they beat Ottawa by scores of 4-0, 5-3, 4-1, and 3-1. So that's a sweep. Second round, they beat the Rangers. They win 5-4, 2-0, 5-3, so that's 7 wins in a row before they lose 3-0 against those Rangers. And then they won the last game 3-2 in overtime. Then they play Philly in the conference finals. They win 4-2. 4-2. They lost 4-2 in the next game. Then the guy has to pause because he realizes he's missing a game. So they won 4-2, 4-2, 4-1. They were up 3-0 on Philly. They lose game 4, 4-2. And they win game 5, 6-0. So again, they only lost 2 games going to the Stanley Cup final that year. In those finals, they lose 4-0, 3-0, and it looks like it might be a sweep. But in games 3 and 4, they win 3-2. They lost 2-1, but they won game 5, 4-3 in triple overtime to keep their hopes alive. And then in game 6, they lost 3-2. So how did it work out in 2009? Well, they faced those same Flyers in the first round. They win 4-1, 3-2. They lose 6-3. They win 3-1. They lose 3-0. And then they win 5-3. So they win in 6 over Philly in the first round. Sort of like this year. Then they meet Washington in the second round, also like this year. They lose 3-2, 4-3. They win 3-2 in overtime. They win 5-3. They win 4-3 in overtime. They lose game 6, 5-4 in overtime. And in game 7, they win. This year they lost. This year they didn't beat Washington. This year they won 6-2. So in the 2009 Stanley Cup run, they meet Carolina in that conference championship. They win 3-2, 7-4, 6-2, 4-1. And it's a wipeout. And then in the finals, they lose 3-1, 3-1. They win 4-2, 4-2. So it was a 2-2 series tie. They lose game 5, 5-0. And this was when everybody was getting ready for this new Detroit dynasty. All right, so Detroit's clearly on a dynasty run, and we're going to see Marian Hossa lift the Stanley Cup. No. Pittsburgh wins 2-1, 2-1, and they send Hossa to a second straight Stanley Cup loss. Because that's kind of the interesting thing, too. Hossa gets 26 points in this season. Hossa gets 15 points in this season, so that's 41 points combined between the two playoff years. And yet, that's what's kind of remembered as Hossa goes from one to the other. And in 2010, he goes to the Chicago Blackhawks and wins the Stanley Cup. So all that talk disappeared a year later. The interesting thing between 08 and 09. So when you look at the top 10 scorers, you got Crosby, Hossa, Malkin, Malone. Ryan Malone proving that Crosby and Malkin have been making wingers look good for a very long time. Gonchar, who also is over here. Sikora, Talbot, Jordan Staal, Pascal Dupuis. That should be Dupuis, not Dubois. So you got something stuck in your head. And I was like, all right, just don't put, and I put it. Ryan Whitney with a goal and 5 assists. And on this side, Malkin with 36 points leads the way. Malkin had 22 the year before. So Malkin really brought his A game in 2009. Crosby with 31 points after 27 the year before. Guerin with 15. Fedotenko with 14. Gonchar with 14. Same total he had the year before. Kunitz 14. Talbot with 13. He had 9 the year before. Letang with 13. Kennedy with 9. And Jordan Staal shows up on both. 6 goals and 1 assist in 2008. 4 goals and 5 assists, 9 points in 2009. So when you look at it, the numbers between the two teams, it's really close. And this shows just how fine a line it is between winning and losing. So in the finals in 2009 with Malkin with 8 points, in 2008 he had 3 points in 6 games. So it's really interesting because Crosby actually played better in the 2008 finals than you could argue that he did in 2009, and yet in 2009 they win the Cup, so nobody talks about it. Now to the Detroit side of the ledger. 2008, they lost 4 games going to the Stanley Cup Final. 2009, they lost 4 games going to the Stanley Cup Final. No difference in difficulty, just when the difficulty took place. Zetterberg led the team in scoring both years. Of course, conspicuous by his absence here is Datsuk. Didn't show up in this list. Shows up on this one with 23 points the year they won the Stanley Cup. And Zetterberg with 51 points between the two playoffs. It's part of the reason why I know a guy's going to the Hall of Fame. But the untold story, my Hall of Famer, who may never get into the actual NHL Hall of Fame, but he's in mine, partly because of this, is Chris Osgood. In 2008, this was Hasek's year. Hasek's back in Detroit to win another Stanley Cup. Here we go. Hasek's going to win a Stanley Cup. Nobody bet on Chris Osgood outplaying him, and Osgood did. He outplayed him in the regular season, and then he outplayed him in the postseason. And you know, at Hasek's age, people can say, well, you know, he got older and that just happens. Right, but nobody was betting on that going into the season. Osgood was kind of a throwaway. 14-4 record, 1.55 goals against, .930 save percentage. And Hasek had 2 wins, 2 losses, 2.91 goals against, and an .888 save percentage. So when you look at it, I mean, it's not really even close between the two. And then you look at Osgood in 2009 and you say, wow, 15-8 record, 2.01 goals against, and a .926 save percentage. So between two playoffs, a .930 save percentage, .926 save percentage, wins 29 games, loses 12. There's a reason he's in my Hall of Fame. When you look at the scoring, not only is Datsuk conspicuous by his absence in 2009, Franzen is actually more points, one less goal, about the same altogether. Lidstrom stands out that he goes from 13 points to 16. And again, this is a 7-game series, right? So what's weird is you could argue that from top to bottom, the stats for Detroit stay basically the same. The stats for Pittsburgh get mildly better, although they had more games to get there. So with those extra games, that might make up for some of the statistical differences. But it all comes down to that Game 7. Detroit, in the year they won the Cup in 2008. In the first round, they beat Nashville. They went 3-1, 4-2. They lost 5-3. They lost 3-2. They win 2-1 in overtime, and they win 3-0 to shut out and take out the Nashville Predators. Against Colorado in the second round, this was really letting us know that rivalry was dead. They win 4-3, 5-1, 4-3, and 8-2 in Game 4. 8-2. That's the last time we mention it because Colorado fans likely remember that game well. Dallas cannot beat Detroit in the playoffs. I've mentioned that before, right? So they moved Detroit to the east so that Dallas can get to the... No, Dallas just stinks. So Dallas loses. Detroit wins 4-1, 2-1, 5-2. They lost Game 3, 3-1. Or Game 4, 3-1. They lost Game 5, 2-1. And I remember thinking, they're just teasing me. And then, in Game 6, they took Dallas out 4-1. Against Pittsburgh in the final, they win 4-0, 3-0. They lose 3-2. They win 2-1. They lose 4-3 in triple overtime to again tease the fans before holding up the Stanley Cup with a 3-2 victory. In that run to the Stanley Cup final in 2009, they swept Columbus in the first round, 4-1, 4-0, 4-1, 6-5, and have cheered for Columbus since. That's how it works. I see a team get destroyed in the first round, like, oh, I want them to come back. It's not a good feature in a fan to decide that you're going to cheer for the team that gets destroyed in the playoffs. Maybe it's just because I've done that since I was a kid. Second round against Anaheim. This was a tough, close round between two teams I really couldn't stand. But on the upside, I didn't want to see Anaheim win another Stanley Cup. So the Red Wings beat Anaheim 3-2. They lose 4-3 in triple overtime. They lose 2-1. They win 6-3. They win 4-1. They lost 2-1 and they won 4-3. So close series for the most part. The triple overtime game, I remember being one of those games that as it went on, I thought, I really don't like either of these teams. I don't know if I should still be watching this because I don't really, but I'll watch. Against Chicago, conference final. They win 5-2, 3-2 in overtime. They lose 4-3 in overtime. They win 6-1, 2-1 in overtime. And that was one heck of a series. You get to rambling and you realize that you just copied numbers from up here. And you're like, all right, so they beat Chicago 5-2, 3-2 in overtime. They lose 4-3 in overtime. They win 6-1 and 2-1 in overtime. And that's where that series ends. I'm like, why is there still commas? That's 4. Then they faced Pittsburgh in the final, so I was just copying down the numbers from up here, and I forgot to put Pittsburgh, and that's when everything all just falls apart. 3-1, 3-1. As I said, they lost games 3 and 4, 4-2, 4-2. They win game 5, 5-0, and then they lost games 6 and 7. And it was big because it's very rare that a team wins game 5 to go up 3-2 and doesn't win the Stanley Cup. And yet, that's what happened to Detroit. Pittsburgh gets the win. And it was a really great couple of runs that Detroit had. Rafalski's a guy that I look at, and I wonder just how underrated he was during his time. And I mean that. I think he was underrated. And when you look at guys on these teams that I think should make the Hall of Fame, obviously Malkin, Crosby, Hossa, Datsuk, Zetterberg. I honestly think, now Marc-Andre Fleury, I think, partly because of the run by Vegas and because he's got so many Stanley Cup rings, he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. But I still don't understand why Osgood isn't going. So, and yet I know he's not going to go. That's just why he's in mine. But it's just weird to me because Ozzy, when it was a big game, a big money game for the Detroit Red Wings, he showed up almost every single time. And he showed up despite the fact that if he played really well, all people would say is, well, it's the defense. But as soon as he had a bad game, they go, see, he's not that good. And it was really frustrating to watch because, honestly, his numbers were fantastic. And all he did in Detroit was win. But, hey. It was an amazing couple of years. I think this is part of the reason why a lot of us at the start of the year were like, well, Pittsburgh and Nashville could meet in the Stanley Cup Final again for 2018. Because I think that rematch in the Stanley Cup Finals feels kind of special. And I know it's not going to happen likely again. Like, you look right now, you know, Vegas and Washington, do they meet again in the final next year? No. And you know, maybe this is the last time this happens. Maybe this is it. That we don't see Stanley Cup finalists match up with each other 2 years in a row. But it does make for some fun. And while everybody criticizes the NBA and the fact that the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers are meeting in the finals for 4 years in a row, it does make for dramatic television. And I have to admit, as somebody who doesn't watch the NBA, I'm paying attention. And I'm paying attention because it's the same teams again. And if it had been the Boston Celtics and the Houston Rockets, I really don't think I would have cared. So there is something to be said for parity and for allowing every team and every city to have a chance. There's also something to be said for the drama of a dynasty in the making or dynasties clashing. And that's kind of how this felt that second year around, 2009. It was, and honestly, in 2009, the best compliment I can give is this. I didn't really cheer for either team. And yet, that was some of the most thrilling hockey. Some of the most thrilling hockey, especially for games that were low scoring. It was fantastic. And I did feel bad for Detroit when they lost in 2009. But at the same time, you know, I was happy for Pittsburgh to see them get a Stanley Cup because it already removed a reputation that Crosby was getting that maybe he wasn't tough enough to win a Stanley Cup. So that's always the narrative before that guy gets his first Stanley Cup. Before any player gets his first Stanley Cup, maybe he's not tough enough. Maybe he doesn't want it enough. So we'll see how things go from here for Pittsburgh. Whether or not we see them in a Stanley Cup final again going forward. Or are they on a downswing? And of course for Detroit right now, they're in a rebuild mode. But if you're going to go on your last run to a Stanley Cup final, this is a good way to do it. This was a pretty fantastic team, and we'll see how many guys that I've got written down on this board that end up being Hall of Famers. Also of note, the 2008 Detroit Red Wings had Chris Chelios on the team, and he is already in the Hall of Fame. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. I'll talk to you again soon.